Hey friends, welcome back to the Ego Project Minis. We are going to talk a little bit today about shame and guilt. And before Lisa speaks a little bit to that, I just want to kind of talk about feelings from the concept of the ego. So we do need a variety of feelings, the ones that feel great and also the ones that don't feel great. But what we have to be very careful of is that every feeling has its purpose, but then it also has its shadow side. So take the feeling of protection, wanting to protect someone, could in the shadow turn into control, right? The feeling of wanting to serve people in the shadow can turn into pleasing people. And the shadow side does not serve us, okay? Shame and guilt are the same way. Guilt is a feeling we need to feel. It's a little ding to let us know, hey, you may have said or done something that harmed somebody else. Maybe you said something that hurt their feelings. Maybe you, moved forward with a project, maybe not in the way that you should have. And guilt is just there to say, hey, you need to go make repair or you need to address this. Shame is the shadow in that it sits and tells us a story of our value and our worth. Okay, so shame is either stored guilt that we have not gone to go make repair, or shame is something that's been projected upon us because of somebody else's guilt or shame that they're sitting in. So with that, Lisa, tell us a little bit about shame not being something that needs to be used for our greatest good.
Oh, thank you for that question. I truly believe that shame is never a teaching or learning tool.
Mm-hmm.
I think our culture has used shame for way too long.
Yes.
In trying to change behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that these behaviors, typically the behaviors that someone is wanting to be changed through shame are the ones that usually one group wants to basically control another individual.
Yes. Yeah.
As an example, we've run into a lot of issues with, decisions our government is making. And people try to shame others for their choices or shame them for not, going the party line, as an example. And it never works. All it does is it makes someone withdraw into themselves or lash out. It's never a learning tool. And so I think our culture really needs to take a deep look at that and stop trying to use it in that manner. My question for you is, I don't know if a lot of people know the difference between guilt and shame when they Can you kind of talk a little bit about the two differences and how to know whether you're feeling guilty or feeling shamed?
Right. So shame is the downward spiral story that we tell ourselves. So shame feels like it actually feels heavy in our bodies, right? So if the story is, I'm not pretty enough, right? Then we'll feel it as a heavy physiological feeling in our body, right? But in our minds, it is the constant comparison, the constant story that shows up in everything that we do. So the reason why shame is so damaging is it literally permeates into our concept of self in relationships, in our conversations with ourselves, with our ability to show up and try new things. Shame is only a downward spiral that leads us to the fog. And the fog, when we talk about living in fog, it's really living in shame. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. What I did was bad. I'm a bad person, right? Shame is, and as are all the shadows, they are all to bring down a downward spiral of self.
That's so good. One of my tells, whether for myself or for others, is the word should.
I should, yeah.
Should and shame, they work together.
They do, yeah. That's a great indicator.
If you're reaching for a cookie, and you say, I shouldn't, you're shaming
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of giving that pause and saying, do I want it?
Yeah.
Something that I desire right now. Is this something I want? If it is, then you eat it. And if it isn't, then you put it back, and it gives, I find that if you start looking for the tell for that, it empowers you.
Yeah.
It empowers you, and you can start, working more from that empowered place, as opposed to that, that spiral of shame.
Well, I love that. I love that you have that indicator to check in with the should statement, right? So instead of saying, I shouldn't have this cookie, you can say, I'm going to have an apple, right? Because sometimes we do have to live healthier lifestyles, right? Or instead of saying, I should go to the gym, we can say, I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, right? Or I can go to the gym tomorrow. Exactly. We can tell ourselves what we can and or are going to do. If we're saying I should or shouldn't, we're implying that there's something wrong with us that should move us or shouldn't move us in a certain direction. Yeah.
I also find that if someone is shoulding me, they're trying to shame me.
They're trying to put their own guilt and shame onto you. That's the projection. Yep.
You should call this person. You should spend time with this person. You should be working harder. Should, whatever it is.
You should be more like your brother, right?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, hey, you can make wise choices.
Yes. And so, making sure that you're paying attention to the language.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also how that language feels in your body, because it is visceral. You feel language in your body. So it's so powerful. So once again, I really believe that we need to stop trying to use shame as a teaching and
right. It's not effective. It never has been, it never will be.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Cristine. If you'd like to learn any more about the ego, you go ahead and click here, and we have some more videos in the description box. All right.
Thank you, Lisa.